But to be honest, no physician went into medicine for the money. Like, people who go into it for the money wind up weeded out at some point along the journey because it just isn't a sustainable career if you did it for the money. But we also didn't sacrifice a decade of our lives to be broke either. There's a balance to be had.
Hey YouTube, it's your girl Dr. Ciri here, coming at you with another video. In today's video, I am going to be creating this fall orangey bronzy makeup look, and I am also going to be discussing the recent Instagram post about how there are 23, count them, 23 billionaires that have made their money in the healthcare industry, but they are not physicians. So if you would like to see how I created this look, and if you'd like to hear my thoughts on that Instagram post, just keep on watching. But before you do, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tap the notifications bell so that way you never miss an upload from me. All right, let's get into it. Let us begin, shall we? I'm going to be starting off with my Tatcha Silk Canvas Primer. Today, I wanted to talk to you all about that Instagram post that disclosed that there are 23 billionaires that were made billionaires by the medical industry, the healthcare industry. And what's interesting about those billionaires is that none of them earn their money from patient care. Now, that was a shock to a lot of people that are not in healthcare. So if you are in healthcare and if you're a physician, you know you're not making that much money at all. And don't get me wrong, like, we make six figures. We're in the top 5% of earners. But if you know anything about the tax code, if you know anything about money, you know that people who are earning that kind of money are also paying the most in taxes. I'm going to be priming my eyes with the Fenty Beauty Amplifying Eye Primer. That's point number one, that doctors don't make as much money as people would like to think, especially when you take into account the amount of debt that is accrued just to pay for medical school alone. So it was no shocker to doctors that these billionaires are not people who participate in patient care and likely are not doctors. So how did we get here? And that's what this video is supposed to be about. How did we get to the point where there are all of these people who are getting rich off of the medical field that aren't actually physicians? I'll tell you how we get here. Now, pay close attention because you are not going to get this information in any textbooks. This is all information that's kind of been handed down from older docs who have seen the evolution and the transition. And it's probably a little bit different for every specialty. I am going to be speaking from the perspective of hospital medicine and the hospitalist. So I'm going to be using the ColourPop Brown Sugar Palette. For my transition shade, I'm going to be using the color Jamocha. There are two reasons that we ended up in this predicament where doctors are not just making bank taking care of patients. The first thing is that doctors from back in the day, like the 50s and the 60s, were jerks, and that played a large role in us getting here. The second thing is something called a never event. Now, what is a never event? A never event is an oxymoron, because if it can never happen, it shouldn't result in an event, but it does. So a never event is defined as something that happens in medicine that should not happen, something that is completely preventable. I'll give an example. If a surgeon is due to operate on someone's knee and the person needs a right knee replacement, and the surgeon accidentally operates on the person's left knee instead of the right knee, that's a never event. You should 1000% know what knee you're supposed to be operating on. That's literally your job. Now, you may be wondering how something like that would happen. I don't know. My guess is that in line with doctors from back in the day being jerks, they were also overconfident. Overconfidence, as we all know, can lead to mistakes. Okay, the next color I'm going to be using is Amber. No. I'm going to use Sorrel. The overconfidence is likely how those never events were happening. Now, what was the response to those never events? Insurance companies decided that they were not going to pay for these preventable errors. The knee example is just one example. I mean, there are tons of examples of never events that we can think of, but the insurance companies were like, nah, bruh, no. They said, you want us to pay you or reimburse you for your services, you are going to need to ensure us some quality. Reimbursement suffered. That's when our business friends came into the picture and said, let us save the day. And they are a part of the process of coming up with all sorts of protocols and things that just ensure quality. Now, of course, physicians contribute to those protocols and we have input and things like that. But instead of us being the ones benefiting from our reimbursements being handed out because we can ensure quality, we have to share with MBAs. They take a nice cut. That's how we got here. And another thing in hospital medicine that took place was the shift from the traditional model of seeing hospitalized patients to the model that we have now, the birth of the hospitalist or the birth of hospital medicine. Because before hospitalists existed, what would happen is the clinicians, the primary care doctors would round on the patients in the hospital. So they would go to their clinics in the morning and then round on the hospitalized patients in the evening. Now, patients these days are a lot sicker and there's not much that can really wait until the end of the day for these patients. Like they have to be actively managed throughout the day. It's better for their care. So that's how the hospitalist was invented. And we're kind of like the home team. Like we're the ones that stay in the hospital. We're there 24/7. You know, there's day shift, there's night shift, there's swing shift. Like we're just always there. That's really helpful in terms of ensuring that patients are taken care of properly in the hospital, that patients who don't need to be in the hospital are sent home. We, you know, like we do hospital medicine. We know what's what. Like if y'all were paying attention to my Instagram stories way back when, there are people that still don't know inpatient criteria and they still try to get us to admit people to the hospital that don't need to be there. And as you can imagine, if someone doesn't need to be in the hospital, the insurance is not about to pay for that hospital stay. So the reimbursement for that hospital stay is going to be zero. We're kind of the gatekeepers in that sense.
Arguably, a lot of the changes that took place once the MBAs, the business people came into the mix, were helpful. So I don't want to take away from the fact that they were helpful. But I have to say that a lot of the changes weren't rocket science, and a physician or a group of physicians could have thought of them. We could have done all of these things on our own and just not be in the predicament where we're tools and we have no real decision-making power. We're just not empowered to do anything. Like we come a dime a dozen. Hospitalist physicians, internal medicine physicians, we come a dime a dozen. And if you complain about your pay, if you complain about your workload, if you complain about just anything, you're very replaceable. Like you're very replaceable. For my lid, I'm going to use the shade Auburn. All right, now to blend out these harsh lines, I'm going to go in with the shade Chai. These shadows blend really, really well. Next, I'm going to fill in my brows with the Anastasia Brow Wiz in dark brown. The good thing for the business people about us being replaceable is that they can sort of, push their own agenda. So for example, if their goal is to ensure that the profit margins are nice, that means that when physicians go to them and say, hey, we're seeing too many patients, this load is too much, then their argument is, other docs aren't complaining, so maybe you need to find another job. And the reason they'll say that instead of
listening is because it is to their financial benefit for one doctor to see as many patients as maybe 1.5 doctors or 2 doctors. It's to their financial benefit, because if they were to take heed and listen to their docs and, oh my God, what have I done to my eyebrow? You gotta start over. Like, I don't like that. And actually, let me do my foundation first. That's the issue. To color correct, I'm gonna use my MAC Peach Luster. It's not in their interest to listen to the doc and actually hire someone else or, figure out a way to lessen the load. Because if you are having one doctor perform as 2 or 3, you're basically getting free labor, free milk and a cow. It may not be the case at every hospital, but I have noticed that it is the case at a lot of hospitals, and it is what it is. It's like I said in my last video, it is the hospital's priority or their goal to make money. If you ask the everyday person what hospitals exist for, they're going to tell you to take care of patients. No, the doctors are there to take care of patients. The hospitals are there to make money, which is why the MBAs exist. The business people exist, which is why the business people have the role that they do. For foundation, I'm going to be using this sample set of the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Foundation. 7.75 I think will be my shade based on some reviews that I've seen. So what I'm going to do is mix 9 and 5.5 and see what we can come up with. So like I said, their goal is to make money. And for example, one of the things that I've noticed since being PRN is that hospitals are doing this thing called an abbreviated shift, where you work for half a day and you're done. Now, if you're a physician, you can already see what the setup is, right? Like it's a setup. If you're a full-time doc and you're working a 12-hour shift, let's say, and they give you 23 patients, we all know it takes longer than a little bit to see 20 something patients. And so we understand that, and I mean, it comes with the territory of the full-time doc. Like you're just going to see what they give you, and however long it takes you to see them, you're going to see them. You're going to provide care.
Hopefully it's a good match. But in any event, what was I saying? The abbreviated shifts. So they can tell you, oh, we only need you for 8 hours, and we want you to work for 8 hours. But then they can give you however many patients they give you. And so you may end up being there for 12 hours or 16 hours or however long, but they're only planning to pay you for 8 hours. Some of you are probably thinking, who would sign up for that? Like, why would any of y'all sign up for that? People do. People are crazy. And it would be nice if we
were, I don't know, more on the same page. But I feel like some doctors are just naive and don't even realize that it's a setup, and other doctors just don't care. So I don't know. It's interesting. But in those types of situations, you can see that the goal is clearly to save money by not paying you for all of your time, and by getting you to perform or overperform, basically. Like, make them as much money as possible. Is this working? Is this a good match? I can't even tell. Oh, I'll have to fix it. My God. Okay, I'm gonna do the rest of this with a beauty blender because I messed up. This is what happens when you do makeup late at night. So yeah, so the name of the game is to save money and to pay the docs not as much as you probably could, because you have to pay everyone involved. You have to pay the doctors, you have to pay the admin, you have to pay the MBAs their cut for doing such a stellar job at making sure that the doctors are doing their job and upholding quality metrics and all that good stuff. And the other piece of it is, this definitely is something that needs to be said. The other piece of it is that a lot of docs will put up with a lot because we have lots of debt, and medical school costs a lot, and a lot of doctors are keeping up with the Joneses. They're not working to pay down their debt. They are literally just keeping up with the Joneses. They need to work. Like they kind of, like, you lose your negotiating power when you don't have a choice, when you are gonna just shut up and work because you need the money to uphold whatever lifestyle you've created for yourself. Next, I'm going in with my Huda Beauty Overachiever Concealer in the shade Graham Cracker. So you can imagine, like with anything, if you are beholden to a job, you're already just disempowered. And that's why I always say, like, pay down your debt. Like, you want to be able to say bye. You want to be able to say F you at the end of the day. You don't want to be in a predicament where you're at a job, and because this does happen, where it's just not, like, there are places that are literally unsafe to work for physicians. And these are things that the public isn't made aware of, because just why would you be made aware of it? But when I say unsafe for the physician to work, I mean, and also unsafe for the patients, honestly. Like, what patient wants to be number 1 of 30 or number 29 of 30 on your census? You know, when you have doctors seeing that many patients, it just gets to be a lot of carelessness, honestly. Like, you can't sustain that type of census. Seeing that many patients for 7 days in a row is just, it's just not safe. And honestly, for any amount of time, whether it's 1 day, 2 days, it's not safe. And honestly, the doctors allow it. They are very, like I said, disempowered and just don't speak up for themselves or stand up for themselves. And why would they, right? Because we have families to feed. Next, I'm going to fill in my brows with the Anastasia Brow Wiz in dark brown. And that's another thing, right? Like, you hear all the time about there being physician shortages and how by the year 2030, we're going to be short X number of thousands of physicians. That's not 100% true, honestly. And people have been saying that for the longest time, that we have a shortage of physicians. And what the real issue is just the way we're distributed. You know, people don't want to work in rural areas. They want to work in places like Chicago, places like Atlanta. The more rural places do have a shortage of physicians, but that doesn't mean that overall there's a shortage of physicians. But they push that narrative, and a lot of people pushing that narrative are the academics and the people who want to boost enrollment for medical schools because they want to get government funding and all that type of stuff for medical schools. And so that's the narrative that they push, and they get their funding and they get their extra slots for medical school opened up, and they get what they're asking for. And the end result is that it becomes very much a seller's market. Yeah, if the doctor is the buyer and the hospital is the seller, it becomes a seller's market. The seller can determine the price. The seller names his or her price, and the doc either accepts it or they move along, because the seller can find someone who's going to accept the price that they set. And again, it's like that because of supply and demand. There's an oversupply of us. Okay, I'm just gonna take this fluffy brush and blend my eyeshadow. And off camera, I did my eyeliner because I wasn't gonna do it on camera anyway. And I'm going to be using the Fenty Beauty setting powder in the shade Banana. So what was I saying? I was saying that, what was I saying? It's a seller's market, and there's not a shortage of doctors. And the reason that narrative is out is because the medical schools want their government funding. There's always an agenda. There's always an agenda for why these narratives exist. Now, like I was saying, you end up with a lot of doctors wanting to work in the same hotspots, and so you just have less negotiating power. But then when you go to more rural areas, you have way more negotiating power. And so to an extent, doctors can kind of name their price if they, go somewhere where there actually is a shortage of doctors in that area. So yeah, makes sense. Next, I'm going to bronze with my Fenty Beauty bronzer in the shade Bayesian Gal. Something else I should mention, the narrative about there being too few physicians is also helpful to mid-level providers who want to expand their scope of practice and who want more independence. That argument about there being too few physicians is what, politically speaking, gets them what they ask for in terms of autonomy and, expanding their scope of practice. And doctors, of course, push for that not to be the case, but the AAMC, you can't in one breath say that there's a shortage of doctors, and then when someone outsmarts you and says, oh yeah, there's a shortage of doctors, give me more independence, you can't turn around and say, oh, actually, just kidding. It's a dirty game. It's a dirty game. But bronzer, I love this bronzer. I really do. I love it. To set the rest of my face, I'm going to be using the Fenty Beauty setting powder in the shade Honey. Next, I'm going to be going back into this eyeshadow palette and taking the shade Jamocha, or Amber actually. I'm going to take Amber, which is like an orangey color, and put it on my lower lash line. I'm actually mixing Sorrel and Jamocha. Okay. That works. For blush, I'm going to use MAC's Sweet as Cocoa. For mascara, I'm going to be using the Pat McGrath Fetish Eyes. So what did we learn today? That if you want to be rich, don't become a doctor, and become someone who piggybacks off of doctors. And that's gonna make you billions. You will happily work your 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, no weekends, no holidays. While doctors work most holidays, most weekends, at least hospitalists do. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant game plan. So, but to be honest, no physician went into medicine for the money. People who go into it for the money wind up weeded out at some point along the journey, because this just isn't a sustainable career if you did it for the money. But we also didn't sacrifice a decade of our lives to be broke either. There's a balance to be had or to be found. But this is also why a lot of doctors, like for instance, Rodox, she's gone into business for herself. What's her name? Tisha Rowe? I know her from Instagram, so I really don't know her at all. But she has her own telemedicine company, and she helps other docs build their practice. Okay, I need to focus on this mascara. Do you see this? This mascara is pooping on any other mascara in the game right now. This mascara is better than any mascara I've ever tried in my life. And Pat McGrath, there's a reason her mascaras cost so much money. And I didn't purchase this one. I actually got it in a, what do you call those? Like when you order stuff from Sephora and you get to pick deluxe samples or whatever. That's how I got this. And I'm contemplating purchasing a large one once this runs out, because this mascara is bomb. Like you see what's done to my eyes. It's amazing. So yeah, where was I? What was I saying? Yeah, if you want to get rich, it's not going to be from taking care of patients. And one thing I want to point out, just because this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, when it comes to deciding what quality measures are looked at and emphasized and pushed by the administrative people in the hospital,
it rarely, and this is my qualm with it. Now, again, I will say that the MBAs and administrative people in the hospital systems have done more good for patient care than not. Like, let's just be very clear about that. But again, I don't think that physicians couldn't have taken the same steps on their own. But I won't take away from what the MBAs have done to the field. But the thing that bothers me is that the quality metrics that are pushed and prioritized are those that do directly correlate with reimbursements. And the topic that's near and dear to my heart is maternal fetal health, right? And that's because I'm a Black woman in America, and my risk of dying in childbirth is way more than my non-Black counterparts. And studies have shown that when Black women die in childbirth, it's largely preventable, right? It's a never event, right? But you don't see any steps being taken on the hospital side per se. I mean, don't get me wrong, like they have protocols and procedures and blah blah blah, but it just almost seems like there needs to be more. And if reimbursements were directly tied to maternal health or maternal fetal outcomes, then hospitals would just be extra about it. Like they're extra about other stuff. And my doctor friends know exactly what I'm talking about, especially my hospitalists. Like hospitals can get extra when it comes to certain quality metrics when they're trying to get their money. And quality care is good for patients in general, but it just bothers me that they pick and choose which metrics to focus on, and the ones that they pick to focus on are the ones that directly relate to the bottom line. So that's the qualm I have about it. And then I also think that, I don't know, I just think physicians should get a bigger piece of the pie since we're the ones doing all the work. But I will say it would be a very poor business decision or business strategy to give physicians more money, because if a physician makes more money, they get out of debt faster, they achieve financial independence faster. So somebody didn't want me to say what I just said because my camera just cut off. But what I was saying was that no matter what field you go into, your employer is not going to pay you enough to live in the same neighborhood as him or her, and they're also not going to pay you enough money to not need to work for them anymore. So no one's trying to pay doctors enough money for them to rush to get out of debt and still live it up. Because that's the thing. You make six figures, you can afford anything, but you can't afford everything. So if you are trying to pay down your debt, like I know someone, shout out to Trisha, she paid off her student debt in 18 months with her salary. So at any point, she could say, forget this job, I don't have to come to work if I don't want to. But not every physician does that, and here we are. To line my lips, I'm going to be taking Cork Lip Liner by MAC. And I don't know if I told y'all, I use my Clinique Pretty Easy Liner to line my eyes. For my lips, I'm going to be using the NYX Soft Matte Lip Cream in London. Let me know if all that made sense. I think I sort of skipped over some parts that I wanted to say because it's hard to talk and do your makeup at the same time, but I'm trying. All right, let me make sure this is blended because it looks blended to me, and then I'll rewatch the footage and it's not blended. It doesn't do what I'm thinking that it's doing. All right, let me fix this hair and then I'll be back. To set my face, I'm going to be using the MAC Fix Plus Matte. And you have to really shake this up while you're using it, otherwise. And this stuff is potent. Okay, this is for the super oily of us, and I'm one of those people. So there it is. There's the look. This orangey, bronzy fall look. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what other topics in medicine you all want to know about. Let me know your thoughts on the information that I shared about how we got to this point in medicine where doctors are not at the top of the totem pole making all the money. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye.